I just spent 6 figures on my father's birthday cruise. The second we stepped aboard, he looked me up and down, brushed invisible lint off his white dinner jacket, then whispered the words that changed everything. "Madison, try not to draw attention. This crowd won't understand how you got here." His words cut deeper than any knife. Right then I made a promise. The waves wouldn't be the only thing rocking his world before Barcelona. See, my father has no idea what's coming, what I've been planning, what I secretly own. But let me back up. My name is Madison Graham, 32 years old. Forbes calls my company the skincare empire that rewrote anti-aging science. Dad, he calls it my little cream business, William Graham III. That's his full name. Old Boston money flowing through his veins. Yacht Club Commodore. The man who literally laughed me out of his office 2 years ago. Cosmetics are a fad, Madison. Real wealth comes from real assets. Real assets. Let me tell you about real assets. My IPO last month valued those little creams at $800 million. His entire trust fund couldn't buy a tenth of what I built. From nothing. With my own hands. But here's the kicker. The thing that's about to blow his mind. I chartered this cruise to celebrate his 65th birthday. 12 suites on the elite deck of legends. Dom Perignon flowing like water. Everything he expects from old money, except it's new money paying every bill. My money. William Darling, the photographer's waiting. Tessa glided over. My stepmother. Emerald silk dress that cost more than most people's cars. At 42, she's closer to my age than his. But she's mastered one skill perfectly. Looking adoringly at his bank account, Brandon appeared next to her. My half-brother, phone already out, snapping selfies like his life depended on it. "This is sick, Maddie. The yacht's like a floating palace. 25 years old, never worked a day in his life. Coasting on trust fund payments and Dad's connections. Madison's treating us well," Dad said. His tone suggested I was the help, not the host. Big mistake. The captain's welcome reception buzzed with Manhattan's elite. Senator Hawthorne glad-handing near the champagne fountain. Tech moguls comparing stock portfolios. Old money mingling with new. Everyone performing their wealth like Broadway actors. I found my penthouse suite key. Escaped the crowd. The room was spectacular. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Marble bathroom. Private balcony, but it was the coffee table that made me smile. A bottle of Dom Perignon sat waiting, with a handwritten note that changed everything. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Graham. As majority shareholder, your presence honors us. Anything you require, please signal the bridge. Captain Santoro. 6 months ago, I quietly acquired 51% of Poseidon Luxury Cruises. Through a web of shell companies. Private transactions. Complete secrecy. Dad had no idea he was strutting around, preening like a peacock, on my ship. I called the steward immediately. 2 requests. Move the Graham family to the Commodore suite on Deck 7. The steward nodded. And relocate Mr. William Graham III to Cabin 4B, the inside room beneath the nightclub. He hesitated. "Ma'am, that cabin has no windows. The base from the nightclub." Perfect. I poured myself champagne, stepped onto my balcony. The Mediterranean sparkled endlessly. For the first time in weeks, I smiled a real smile. The black tie gala that evening was everything Dad loved. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, caviar service. He held court near the grand piano, regaling admirers with stories of sailing victories and business conquests. Tessa hung on his arm like an expensive accessory. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. "Senator Hawthorne, you must meet my daughter." Dad's voice carried across the room. "Madison runs a little skincare company." Hawthorne smiled politely. "How lovely. Do you work in the ship's spa? The question landed like a physical blow. Around us, conversations paused. Heads turned. My cheeks burned. But not from embarrassment. From pure calculation. Senator, my company just completed Phase 3 FDA trials. Cellular regeneration serum. The results were so promising that Pfizer offered us $2 billion last week. I kept my voice light, conversational. I'd be happy to send samples to your office. Hawthorne's eyebrows shot up. $2 billion, that's conservative, I said. We turned them down. Dad's face went pale. Around us, conversations shifted, heads turning. I could feel the social tide changing. Old assumptions crumbling like sand castles. Then Captain Santoro's voice boomed over the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce our evening's special guest, Ms. Madison Graham, majority owner of Poseidon Luxury Cruises and tonight's hostess. The applause was thunderous. Photographers appeared from nowhere, camera flashes popping like fireworks. I walked to the podium, feeling Dad's shocked stare following every step. Thank you all for joining us on this celebration of family, I began, my voice carrying across the ballroom. Sometimes the greatest voyage is the one that brings us home to what truly matters. More applause. I caught Dad's eye across the room. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. The next morning, Brandon burst into my suite, face flushed with panic. Maddie, we have a problem. Dad's in deep shit. I looked up from my laptop. Quarterly reports spread across the screen. Define deep shit. 900,000 deep. Some Vegas casino called me. They couldn't reach Dad. He owes them from his last trip. They're getting nasty. My blood turned to ice. Why did they call you? Brandon's face crumpled. He put your name down as guarantor. Used your social security number and everything. Said you were good for it. Identity theft. Against a public figure. The implications hit me like a tsunami. I grabbed my phone, called my attorney in Manhattan. Sarah, I need Dad's accounts frozen immediately. Identity theft investigation. Full forensic audit. I hung up, turned to Brandon. How long has he been gambling? I don't know. A year, maybe more. He said it was just entertainment, but... Brandon slumped in the chair. Tessa's been asking weird questions about your company's valuation. And there's something else. What? I saw her yesterday, on deck 5. She was with Clay Bennett. You know, Dad's business partner who booked this cruise. They weren't just talking Maddie. The pieces clicked together. Clay Bennett. The man who'd been pushing Dad to invest in high-risk ventures. Who'd suggested this cruise. Who'd been circling our family like a shark sensing blood. I found them 2 hours later on the observation deck. Tessa pressed against the railing. Clay's hands roaming her waist. They were so absorbed they didn't notice me. Until my phone's camera click broke the spell. Lovely view, I said. Tessa spun around. Emerald necklace catching the sunlight. Madison, Clay was showing me. The horizon. Yes, I can see that. I held up my phone. The camera really captures the intimacy of the moment. Clay stepped forward. All false bonhomie. Madison, good to see you. Your father's been looking for you. I doubt that. He's probably too busy discovering his credit cards don't work. Both their faces went white. You see, when someone commits identity theft against a public figure, banks tend to freeze assets immediately. Pending investigation. It's really quite inconvenient for the guilty party. I walked away, leaving them frozen against the railing like ice sculptures. That afternoon, rough seas hit. The captain announced a storm warning. Winds gusting to 40 knots. Waves 12 feet high. Most passengers retreated to their cabins. I stayed on deck, Watching the ocean churn, I found Dad in the ship's business center, frantically calling banks, his hair disheveled, his usual polished appearance cracking like old paint. "They've frozen everything," he said without looking up. "Every account, every card. They're saying there's an investigation." "There is." He turned, eyes wide with panic. "Madison, you have to help me. This is some kind of mistake. You forged my name, used my social security number, committed identity theft." I sat across from him, voice steady as steel. "That's a federal crime, Dad. 10 years minimum." His face went gray. "I was going to pay it back. The casino, they said I was good for it. That the Graham name, my name, not yours, mine." I leaned forward. "You mortgaged my reputation to fund your gambling addiction." "It's not an addiction. I just needed a big win to what, impress your friends, prove you're still relevant." I stood up. "You're pathetic." He flinched like I'd struck him. "Dinner tonight. Observatory dining room, 8 o'clock. Don't be late." I left him sitting there, shoulders sagging, looking older than his 65 years. The storm intensified as evening approached. The ship's gentle rocking became a pronounced roll. I could hear dishes rattling in the galley. Perfect ambiance for what I had planned. Dad arrived at 8 sharp, looking haggard. His dinner jacket wrinkled, his tie askew. He'd aged a decade in 2 days. "Madison, please. We need to talk about this reasonably." "Sit down." He sat. I slid a folder across the table. "Your gambling debts. 900,000 to the Bellagio, 200,000 to Caesars. Various private games in Boston totaling another 300,000. Total $1.4 million. His hands shook as he opened the folder. "How did you—" "I bought your debts. All of them. This morning." I poured myself wine, hand steady as a surgeon's. "Congratulations, Dad. You now owe your daughter $1.4 million. He stared at the papers, speechless. But that's not the best part. I pressed a button on the tablet beside my plate. The restaurant's wall screens flickered to life. Security footage of Tessa and Clay's passionate embrace. Timestamp yesterday. 3:47 p.m. Gasps rippled through the dining room. Other passengers pretending not to watch leaned forward in their seats. Dad's face went from gray to crimson. "You recorded them. Ship security cameras, publicly accessible to the owner." I paused. "That would be me." "What do you want?" His voice barely a whisper. "An apology. A real one. For every condescending comment, every dismissive laugh, every time you made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family." "Madison, say it." He looked around the restaurant, at the faces watching us, at the screens still showing his wife's betrayal. "I'm sorry." "For what specifically?" For not believing in you, for dismissing your dreams, for—" His voice cracked. "For being a terrible father." Tears ran down his face. I'd never seen him cry before. "I'm sorry, Madison, I'm so sorry." I pressed another button. The screens went black. The restaurant slowly returned to normal conversation, though every eye remained on us. "The debts are forgiven," I said quietly. "But there are conditions." He nodded frantically. "You retire, immediately. Turn over control of the family trust to me. Check yourself into gambling rehabilitation, and stay away from casinos for the rest of your life. And if I refuse, prison. Tessa will divorce you and take half of what's left. Clay will disappear with the rest. You'll have nothing." He stared at me for a long moment. "When did you become so hard?" "When I had to. When you taught me that sentiment was weakness. That family was just another word for leverage." I softened my voice slightly. I'm not doing this to destroy you, Dad. I'm doing it to save you. He nodded slowly. What about Tessa? What about her? She made her choice. Clay Bennett's Ponzi scheme collapses next week. The FBI's been investigating him for months. She'll be lucky if she doesn't face charges herself. You knew about Clay. I've known about Clay for 6 months. Why do you think I bought the cruise line? Why do you think I invited him aboard? He's contained here, Dad. No more victims. Dad's eyes widened. You planned all of this. I planned to give you one last chance to be the father I needed. You chose to steal from me instead. I stood up. The announcement will be made tomorrow. Your retirement, my control of the trust, your new life in recovery. Spin it however you want. I started to leave, then turned back. There's a cabin waiting for you in Barcelona. Small but comfortable. The trust will provide a modest income. Enough to live quietly if you stay away from cards and dice. Madison, his voice was broken. Do you hate me? I looked at him. Really looked. Past the arrogance and the cruelty and the weakness. He was still my father. The man who'd taught me to sail. Who'd read me bedtime stories before the world taught him that love was currency. No, Dad, I don't hate you, I just don't respect you anymore. I left him there, slumped in his chair, staring at the storm through the window. The next morning dawned clear and calm. We'd weathered the storm and were approaching Barcelona. I stood on my balcony, watching the Spanish coast emerge from the morning mist. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Brandon. But he looked different. Cleaner, somehow. More purposeful. I wanted to thank you, he said, for not including me in whatever happened to Dad. You're not him, Brandon. You have a choice. I know. And I've made it. I'm done with the trust fund party circuit. I want to work, really work, for you if you'll have me. I studied my half-brother's face. For the first time, I saw genuine determination there. R&D department, entry level. You'll start at the bottom and work your way up like everyone else. Deal. He shook my hand. What about Dad? He'll be fine. Different, but fine. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find out who we really are. The ship docked in Barcelona at noon. I watched from my balcony as passengers disembarked. Some heading to the airport. Others beginning new adventures. Dad walked down the gangplank alone, carrying a single suitcase. He looked small and fragile. But for the first time in years, his shoulders weren't rigid with false pride. Tessa was nowhere to be seen. According to the ship's manifest, she'd disembarked in Nice with Clay Bennett. By now, they'd probably discovered that Clay's accounts had been frozen too. The FBI was thorough like that. I packed my own bag slowly, savoring the quiet. In a few hours, I'd fly back to Boston and return to my empire. But first, I had one more stop to make. The Barcelona harbor was bustling with activity. Fishing boats bobbed alongside luxury yachts. The air smelled of salt and seafood. I found Dad at a small cafe overlooking the water, nursing a coffee and staring at the horizon. Mind if I join you? He looked up surprised. Madison, I thought you'd left. My flight's not until tonight. I sat across from him. How are you feeling? Lost. Terrified. But also... He paused, searching for words. Relieved, I think. I'd been carrying that debt like a weight for so long. The rehabilitation center is expecting you next week. It's a good place. Discreet, effective. You'll like the sailing program. He nodded. I used to love sailing. Before it became about winning regattas and impressing people. You can love it again, just for the joy of it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the boats come and go. Finally, he spoke. I failed you, didn't I, as a father? You failed yourself first. I was just collateral damage. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about it. About the years of dismissal and condescension. About the identity theft and the gambling. About the way he'd made me feel like an outsider in my own family. Ask me again in a year, I said, when you've done the work. He nodded, understanding. I'll try to be better. I know you will. Not for me, but for yourself. That's the only way it works. I stood to leave, then turned back one more time. Dad. For what it's worth, I'm proud of who I became. Partly because of you, but mostly in spite of you. He smiled sadly. I'm proud of you too, Madison. I always was. I just didn't know how to show it. I walked away, leaving him with his coffee and his thoughts and the endless blue Mediterranean stretching toward tomorrow. On the plane back to Boston, I opened my laptop and began planning the next phase of my company's expansion. Asian markets, European partnerships, a new research facility in Cambridge. The future was bright and full of possibility, but sometimes I still thought about that cafe in Barcelona, and the broken man who'd finally learned the difference between wealth and worth. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't crushing your enemies. It's teaching them to save themselves. The ocean had set things straight just as I'd promised. The rest was up to him.